Why don't we pronounce God's four-letter name, the Tetragrammaton, by Yehuda Sherpin? Look into the Torah scroll or Tehillim, and you'll discover that very often God's name is written as four Hebrew letters, Yud, He, Vav, He. However, this name is never actually said aloud by Jewish people, and it is unknown how to pronounce it. Instead, it's usually read as Adonai, another sacred name of God that roughly translates as my master. Now, why is it unknown? Can't one simply read it off the page of a Chumash or Tehillim? The key here is that, contrary to popular belief, the vowels that appear with these four letters in many printed texts are not an indication of how they are to be pronounced. Rather, they indicate which of God's other names are to be substituted in the verse. When it is pronounced like Adonai, it is given the vowels of that name, and when it is pronounced like Elohim, it is given those vowels, but the actual pronunciation of the name of God is unknown. When referring to this unpronounced name, we sometimes use the terms a Hebrew word that means unique name, or another Hebrew word that means explicit name or separated name, since it is separate from all other names, or the most common Hebrew word, which literally means being, as it is expressed his transcendence of time and space. In English, this ineffable name is sometimes referred to by the Greek name Tetragrammaton. So what's the point of a name that's never pronounced? And was there ever a time in history when it was pronounced? Not as I am written, am I pronounced. When speaking to Moses at the burning bush, God said, "This is my name forever, and this is how I should be mentioned in every generation." As the sages of the Talmud explain, this verse tells us that God has an eternal name, which is separate from how it's actually pronounced by Jews of all generations. But there was a major exception in the Holy Temple. The priest would confer the priestly blessing every day, pronouncing the name as it was written. The high priest uttered this name a total of 10 times throughout the Yom Kippur service. Maimonides explains that they taught not just the pronunciation, which vowels were to be applied and which letters were to be stressed, but also the metaphysical secrets it contained. As the mystics explain, this ineffable name of God is the only true name. It represents the essence of his reality from which all creation flows. From this perspective, nothing besides him truly exists. The other divine names veil the true divine essence of reality and are the interfaces through which he brings into being and interacts with the creation. Reflecting this, we substitute his name with the lesser names of Adonai and Elohim, which represent the dynamic of him interacting with creation. Historically, great righteous individuals to whom the divine presence was revealed were able to articulate the essence of the divine name because they saw themselves and the world around them as being nothing before him. Hiding his ineffable name. Although the priests in the temple originally used God's ineffable name, the spiritual state of the Jewish people declined over the generations. There came a time following the passing of the high priest Simeon the righteous, when the priests ceased uttering God's name in the priestly blessing in the temple, lest it be learned by people lacking proper statute and moral conduct. At that point, many of the miracles that took place daily in the Holy Temple ceased to appear regularly. Some say that this was the reason God's name was no longer pronounced, for if the temple was not a place where his presence was readily apparent, then this name was not to be said. From this point on, every 7 years, the sages would only teach the secret of pronouncing the name to their students, and sons who had proven their moral conduct. 12-letter divine name. So what name was used instead? Maimonides further explains that the sages would employ a 12-letter name of God, as well as a 42-letter name, which was considered less holy than the Tetragrammaton, but more special than the name Adonai, which we use today. Now, this name was not a single word, but comprised a number of words with a total of 12 letters. The sages would use this name whenever they entered the 4-letter name in Scripture. It was freely taught to anyone who wished to learn it, and it was used by the priests conferring the priestly blessing in the Holy Temple. However, as the generations regressed, the time came when this 12-letter name needed to be made secret as well. From then on, it was only entrusted to the most worthy priest to use during priestly blessing in the temple, who would say it in a low voice so that it would be drowned out amid the singing of their peers. The Mishnah states that a person who pronounces the 4-letter name is undeserving of a share in the world to come. And indeed, the great sage Rabbi Kanina ben Teradine died a martyr's death as divine punishment for pronouncing the ineffable name of God in public. Power over life and death. When someone utters the name of God, it triggers a particularly spiritual illumination that affects the physical realm. A classic example is Moses killing the Egyptian slave driver by using God's ineffable name. According to some authorities, this power is accessible only to those deeply connected to God. Others explain that by uttering the name, even an ordinary person with no understanding of its inner meaning can override nature to some extent. The Midrash relates that when God gave the Torah, He also gave each Jew 2 crowns engraved with the ineffable name, through which they would have dominion over the angel of death. But due to their sins, these crowns were taken away from them and will be returned in the Messianic era. May it be speedily in our days.